2 in the morning. Oscars are in a few hours. I'm almost there. Right, here we are, part 20. Oh my god, the promised land is so near. This time we're talking about Best Director now. Interesting though, talking about Best Director, lots of people ask me what's the difference between this and Best Picture. How come the director doesn't get the award for Best Picture? Well, the way I try to describe it, differentiate it, is that Best Picture is for, you know, everything coming together. And, that's the picture. And one of those components that come together is direction. So yes, it's true that the director puts the movie together, is the one who makes the movie, but he is still one component of the full picture. And really the easiest way for me to say like what exactly a director does is to look at a set and just observe what the director does. He is the person who calls the shots, right? He's the person who decides how scenes should play out and how scenes are constructed. But I like thinking of it on a deeper level. For me, the director is the person who balances or juggles all the elements of a film, and you can kind of judge it like that, like see how well everything has been balanced. Or the way I really like judge it is if a movie is more than the sum of its parts, then you know that the director did a good job. The director for me is the person who is in charge of really, getting the message out of the separate components of a film. But again, I'm not a director, so it's kind of hard for me to say these things because I don't really know what I'm saying. But whatever, let's get right into it. The nominees for Best Director are Alfonso Cuarón for Gravity, Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave, Alexander Payne for Nebraska, David O. Russell for American Hustle, and Martin Scorsese for The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, I more or less agree with this list. I mean, obviously, these nominated directors are gonna have their movies nominated for Best Picture. Well, most of the time that happens. Again, I will always say that I could have seen Spike Jonze here, or the Coen brothers, or Richard Linklater, or even Paul Greengrass for Captain Phillips. But as it is now, this is a pretty good list, yeah. I'm just kind of pretty much gonna rush through these because, again, it's hard for me to talk about direction because for me it's such an abstract thing. But anyway, here at fifth place, I'm gonna put Martin Scorsese. Now, among the five here, Martin Scorsese's direction for Wolf of Wall Street is arguably the most energetic, it's the most playful, it's the most dynamic. Stuff is happening everywhere, and it was really a risky move for Martin Scorsese to do this kind of style, because he really wanted, I can see, to show us how bad this entire situation is by giving it to us like completely no holds barred. It's kind of like if you ask a drug dealer, hey, what's heroin like? And then he stabs a needle into your arm and gives you a shot of heroin, says that's what it's like. He didn't just tell you, he just gave it to you. And that's a really weird metaphor, but that's the best way I can describe it. Like, it is so in your face, and that's both a good and a bad thing. The bad that comes with that is that perhaps he was a bit too playful. The movie for me, honestly, really is a bit too long. It's too excessive. It could have benefited from more focus, but as it stands now, just the level of playfulness and just the dynamic stuff that's happening, it is very infectious and it makes The Wolf of Wall Street really fun to watch. Now, fourth place, I'm gonna put David O. Russell. Now, just like Scorsese here, a lot of people say that his direction in American Hustle was a lot like Scorsese's, but again, it's very playful. But this time, I think it's very much more centered on character. As I mentioned before, David O. Russell wasn't trying to talk about con men as a job or anything like that, or the legal whatever behind the act of conning, really on these characters and their motivations. And like I keep repeating that this movie is this perfect balance between drama and comedy to the point that it doesn't feel like they're shifting from one to the other. It becomes just one thing. What's cool is that David O. Russell seems to be conning the audience all throughout this movie because he keeps doing these things where we think he's going to fall by the wayside and, accidentally lose focus, but he never does that. I guess the thing that brings it down for me is the fact that it's not necessarily, it doesn't have as much of its personality as I would have wanted. I mean, most of the personality comes from the actors and stuff. Direction itself, it's good and balanced and all, but for me, it just didn't have a stamp on it. Now, third place, I'm gonna put Alexander Payne. This time, this guy is super, super steady. and just very straightforward in this direction. And for this kind of movie, it really really worked. As opposed to the previous two nominees, Alexander Payne here showed extreme restraint, really just letting characters and dialogue, fill up the scenes and stuff. But he has such a good sense of balance between all these elements. He really made this world so relatable and immersive by making everything, equal with each other. He understated everything so well to the point that, the emotions never become clouded. Even like with cinematography and music, really just supported these emotions and the story. And again, Alexander Payne took a risk here, but this time through its slow pace. But here, I think it really did, pay off. Slow pace isn't always bad, and Alexander Payne proves it here that sometimes a movie does call for, pace like this. On second place, I'm going to put Steve McQueen. When I was going into 12 Years a Slave, I really thought it'd be like an Oscar bait kind of movie. And the reason why I, bow down to Steve McQueen so much is that he, in my opinion, completely, went around that whole Oscar bait thing. This movie does not feel like Oscar bait at all. What I mean by Oscar bait is like the whole sentimental, overacted, just, typical thing that people think the Academy goes for. And 12 Years a Slave is so unlike that. Steve McQueen really presents things here almost factually. Like this is almost a documentary, but that is again such a feat by being able to present such realistic stuff that's untampered while still having dramatic focus. Steve McQueen also gets points for making such an extremely hard to watch movie without it being completely explicit the entire time. This proves that he knows how to kind of have that feeling of dread and just despair about everything, even if you're not necessarily seeing something bad in your face. He really made you feel it. And Steve McQueen really proved like this is like the way to direct these kinds of movies about really touchy topics, and it's just a masterclass in filmmaking. However, he is second place just because the Spanish decided to shoot a movie about space. Yes, Alfonso Cuarón for Gravity definitely takes a top spot here. The thing about Gravity is that among all the other movies that came out last year, it is so dedicated to complete and utter immersion. And the most obvious evidence of this is the long takes. But not just this, Alfonso Cuarón really used editing and music and cinematography and acting. You can imagine him as just a puppet master, and he really just suspended all these things in the perfect balance to keep tension alive for 90 straight minutes. And I know lots of people direct thrillers nowadays, but no one does it like this. Like, you never are on the edge of your seat for the entire movie, and really just that is such a feat to me. It should also be noted that Alfonso Cuarón finally used modern technology the way I think it should be used. IMAX in 3D. Like everyone else uses it as a gimmick, and I feel like Alfonso Cuarón really saw these things and thought, you know what, that could actually make my movie, better. And people have to watch it in theater now, and that's what he did. So as for who I think is going to win the Oscar, this is definitely going to Alfonso Cuarón. Steve McQueen and Alexander Payne, David O. Russell, Martin Scorsese, they're all great directors, but they're here, while Alfonso Cuarón directing Gravity is just on another planet, honestly. And I think the Academy really does recognize that because Gravity is going to win lots of technical awards, but I think it is like the one movie where you can tell that they needed a fantastic director to make this work, and Alfonso Cuarón is the man. He is so good at what he does. He is a genius. He gets it. So those are my picks. Oh my god, one more video to go. But anyway, those are my picks for Best Director. What do you guys think? Who should win? Who will win? Whatever you think, whether you agree with me or not, please leave a comment. Let's have a conversation.